Okay, welcome everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining this Cogent NeedApp webinar. Today, hopefully, you'll get a good insight of how NeedApp works. First, I'll introduce myself. My name is Dennis Carey. I'm the Precision Product Manager in the North of the UK. My background is in grazing systems. Representing Northern Ireland, we have David McMichael, who's the Precision Product Manager over there. David's background is in reproduction checks. And in the south of England, who's here today on the call, is Ben Strange. He covers the south of the UK. His background was in Holstein high yielding systems. We also have from NeedApp, Dirk van Dam, who is our business manager with NeedApp. He's going to give us a bit of an insight into how NeedApp works. Last but not least, we have Dane, who manages a farm in the south of England. They run about 800 cows, and they've been using NeedApp now with the last 2 years. So he'll give us a good insight how he finds the system. So first of all, get everything going. Before we get going, just one last point. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A box at the top of the screen, and we'll answer that at the end of the session. So over to you, Jer, and you take over, please.
All right, thanks a lot for the introduction, Dennis. Well, thanks everyone for joining in. I will keep it relatively short. I think the most important thing or the most interesting thing is that we have a dairy farmer on the call that's been using the system for a few years now and can tell about his experience. But I think it is good to give a short introduction on who is NeedApp. Because we might, a lot of people maybe are not so familiar with NeedApp. Because often we sell through different brands and different distributors, and the NeedApp is more in the background. So who is NeedApp? We are a technology company from the Netherlands. We've been around since 1929, so we're almost reaching our 100-year anniversary. And even more interesting is that we've put the first sensor on a dairy cow in 1977. So this really sets us apart from if you would compare us to competitors, that we've almost been doing this for over 50 years, and that experience we bring along. So these days we have more than 1,000 people working for NeedApp worldwide, and more than 12 offices in the world. So just really basics on what is cow monitoring, and I want to show that also with this picture. What I would like to show is you see a dairy cow, and the dairy cow is being chased by lions, and this is of course not something that you'll see in reality, but it does picture what a very important feature of automatic cow monitoring, what we can do with sensors, because cows are prey animals. They don't like to show that they're sick. So once you as a dairy farmer, you see a cow visually sick, this means that the cow has already been sick for 2 or 3 days. What we can do with cow monitoring is we can pick up, I think the presentation is gone, but what we can do with cow monitoring is we can pick up these cows 2 or 3 days before you would see them visually sick, because we can track their eating and rumination time and see if there's any changes in that. So that's a big benefit. Let's see if we can get the screen back also. Yeah. Sorry for that. I'll go back to the slides. Yes, there we are. So that's one, and then the other one is, again, also visually, it's really important or really difficult to constantly monitor your cows 24/7. And this is something, again, we can do with these sensors. Putting a sensor on a cow, we can 24/7 monitor the cow on eating, rumination, data, and like physically, that's just really impossible to do. So if we look worldwide, we are the #1 in cow monitoring systems. If you look at the amount of tags that have been sold worldwide, this means that we are monitoring over 7 million dairy cows worldwide. And to add to that is that here in the UK, Cogent is a very important business partner for us, because, of course, we produce these cow monitoring systems, but it also even becomes more valuable with the advice from Cogent on how to use these insights on reproduction and on health. So just another thing I want to share is that we're expecting that within the next 5 years, 80% of all professional dairy cows or dairy farmers will be using a cow monitoring system. It's you can compare it with everyone these days having a mobile phone. The value of using a cow monitoring systems on your dairy cows, the value has been proven, and therefore within the next 5 years we really see a really strong adoption of all farmers using this technology. And you can talk about three major benefits in three categories. So one is improved reproduction. So this is especially where the automatic heat detection plays a big role. If you do visual heat detection, moving to a cow monitoring system, you can easily get up to 5 to 10% in pregnancy rate, and this is, of course, a really big value that for your dairy farm. And then there's also the improved health, what I showed you with the pictures with the lines. You can pick up your cows, sick cows, 2 to 3 days earlier. And that allows you also to not treat the cows always with antibiotics, but you can also actually start treating them, for instance, with a drench and keeping the cows in milk. So you prevent also milk loss and you have healthier cows. And then there's the improved management on your farm, because we don't only give you individual cow data, but we also can combine all the data into one and give you insights on the herd level. And just a few numbers here. You see at the bottom, there have been multiple studies, but one of the latest studies tells that when you start implementing a cow monitoring system, you will earn 160 pounds per cow annually. And that's an average number. And it also gave a return on investment of 7.8. So this means in most cases, when you buy a system, within the first year, you're already have had the return on investment. You've already bought the system back, and from then on, you're only just reaping the benefits of the system. So it's not really the question within the next 5 years who's going to buy a system. We expect that most farmers will buy a system, but then the question is, what system should you buy? And I would like to talk about shortly why NeedApp. I think there's 4 things that you want to look at as a dairy farmer. One is reliability, because you will start, when you buy a system, you will rely on the system for your heat detection and health detection. And when you rely on it, you also don't want it to fail. And that's really important. And that's where we stand out with our almost 50 years of experience. Our tags, they last 8 to 10 years on average. So they're really strong and have a failure rate below 1%. So really, once you put a tag on the cow, it's a very reliable system. Then there's integration. So we also integrate with most of the herd management softwares that's available. We see a big need for a farmer to have all the data in one place and not working with 5 different systems. So we're really strong on integration. Then the other one is innovation. So we at NeedApp, our core focus is creating new products, new insights for you, the dairy farmer. So we don't have different interests than that. So that's our core focus. So we also invest heavily in new innovations, every day. And then there's the value. The only thing I want to say on that is I think if you look at the cow monitoring tag, you want it to last long. And it's important always to check, if you're looking at a cow monitoring system, how long will these tags last? I mean, you can get probably can get cheaper tags out there, but they often don't last 8 to 10 years. They might last half, and then what's the value? So then one more slide on just an innovation, something that's coming up. So along with our cow monitoring tags that do eating and rumination time, we're also launching in 2026 our vision system, with which we can automatically detect cows with hoof problems, so locomotion. So often you would trim your 100 cows to find the 1 or 2 cows, and this system allows you just to really only trim the cows that need it. So you can be a lot more precise there and also manage the hoof health on your farm. So just to end, often these systems are being looked at sometimes as an expensive system, but if you calculate it, you can, and if you look at it this way, if you would calculate it backwards, you can see it as an extra 24/7 employee that's constantly monitoring your cows on eating, ruminating, health, reproduction. And if you would calculate it down for a 200 cow dairy farm, you would be looking at 50 pence to a pound per hour. So it can probably also be your cheapest employee on the farm that's always there and doesn't make mistakes. So that's really short on NeedApp. Then I'll give the floor back to Ben and Dennis.
Oh, good afternoon. Thanks very much, Chuck. Just like to pick up a couple of points actually from what you've just said, specifically relating to sort of employees. We know in the industry that we are finding quality labour, finding labour with the correct skills is becoming increasingly difficult, and having this technology ensures that the people with the knowledge have got access to the information they need, and they can delegate from that. Which is, creates power and convenience. Just an example, yesterday I had a WhatsApp message from a guy who's on holiday in Turkey, asking me what I thought of a particular graph, and could I call the employee to say it's there, let's have a look at this cow. So there is that side of it. I quite like to see the graph that goes with the cow being chased by lions. I suspect it's going to have a steep rise in activity, followed by a very sharp decline. Eating time is going to go up, but not for the cow. Moving on to what I came to talk about, a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the NeedApp system, what actually happens. An important point with the system is you don't need a PC on the farm with software loaded on it to operate the system. The system has all the software that's required to run it installed on the processor that we install. Readers can be placed around the farm, as many as needed, to cover buildings in various locations, and there's different ways in which we can connect them up to expand the system as much as the site or sites require. Information is passed from the processor up to the server, where the information is then processed and provided in the form of graphs, which you can interpret. And Dennis is going to talk a little bit about those graphs and the interpretation of them in a minute. Multiple sites is achievable with NeedApp now. So regardless of how far apart you might have a location for dry cows or maiden heifers from the main milking unit, you can integrate that information so that there's a seamless transition of data between the two sites. Cows can move away to dry and come back again without losing any of the information that you've had on them. Transponders themselves, they hold 24 hours worth of data. So for example, in a grazing situation, if cows are out of range for a period of time whilst grazing, all the information on that collar will download within around 10 to 15 minutes of the cow coming back within range of an antenna. The reason that we have the ability to do that is because the capacity of the processor will allow us to process up to 9,900 cows. So we have the basically, long and short, the capacity to process that data in a timely manner. This will mean that if you're running a sort gate option, that the information is being passed directly to that sort gate before the cows are through the parlour. Cows can be sorted automatically on your own selection if you're sorting through a NeedApp gate, or they can be sorted manually if you're selecting them yourselves through your own existing sorting arrangements. Access to the platform can be managed, so work lists can be specifically generated for different members of the team. It allows you to take control of what they see, what they can control, and how they can use that information. Work lists constantly updated, and on the app, push notifications are available. You can manage whether you want to see push notifications for heat attentions, whether you want to see them for urgent health attentions or every health attention. That can be edited and specifically set up for your own requirements. Dennis, if I can pass over to you to talk a little bit more about the work lists that you'll be using on a daily basis.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so just want to talk about an interface on NeedApp Now. So NeedApp Now is a new platform we've been using now with nearly 2 years. And here, what I have in front of me is the main screen. So you can just see in front of me, first screen we look at every morning or afternoon. So I'm just going to take into a little bit of this. The work list. The work list is probably the most common screen you're going to look at, and on that everything comes together. So we have health, we have heat lists, we also have a reproduction checks, work list that you can customize to which you want, and in there's calendar data, drying off, PDing, etc. We have another good feature. It does happen if someone accidentally puts a color on the wrong way, it tells you. So it's very simple to make slight mistakes, but it's there to support you in this. So first of all, going on the health. How this is done now is a range from 1 to 10, 10 being very good, 1 not so good. And if that cow is going one way or the other, what is very helpful is on the right hand side is a trend, -1, etc. So if I look at the second cow down, it's an 8, which is not too bad, but what worrying is it's -1. So that trend is going the wrong way. That animal will only get worse. So that's what's there to support you in that. And just so an example of one of those animals, we have, if I can get my pointer. So this animal had rumination and eating time going along and the hours it was doing. But at some point here, our inactivity increased. Inactivity basically is when it's doing neither eating or rumination. And how the collar works is very simple. Eating is head up and down. Rumination is that cud movement in its neck. And a cow, which is in heat, will be doing a lot more activity. So here we have this animal. Inactivity has gone up. We've been sent a warning. It improved. And a few days later, it's still not out of the woods. And here we have inactivity going back up. This is why this trend is very, very helpful. And you can see up here, it's a -1. Now, a little bit about the heat. So we work on a star system now, 1 to 5 star. So I'm looking at the very first animal, and it's a 5 star. I'll show you the graph in a second. Also, you can do actions at this point, inseminate, a heat, and no heat. And here we have a 3 star. Also, calendar data is brought with this. Days in milk, how many inseminations it have, days since its last insemination, etc. Excuse me. So if you look at the actual star system, might be a bit difficult to see the screen, but here we have a calving date. This animal, after the first 15 days cycled, and had a 3 star heat. 11 days later, had a 4 star, which is a bit stronger. But interesting, that might be a case of the cow could have been slightly cystic. So the animal was dealt with, and then she's back to a cycle of 25 days, a 4 star, and here we is today on a 5 star excellent heat. We can also look back on the dates and see the type of heat they have. This example, they have quite a long voluntary wait period. That's why you might notice this animal hasn't been inseminated. But that's just a little bit about the star system. So I'm going to hand you back over now to Ben, and he's going to go into more detail.
Thanks very much, Dennis. So we've heard a little bit about how you look at the graphs on a daily basis, looking for sick cows and in heat cows. I think where we're looking now with this type of technology, with the NeedApp technology, is moving forward into assessing the herd management, the overall herd management, how groups are being managed individually and how they're responding to that. So within the herd app, we can take a far deeper look into that data. Benefits of the herd at herd level. So within the groups, you've got monitoring of the averages. So you can see whether when you make changes in ration, when you get changes in management, what impact that has. It puts you in a position where you may suspect you've got an overstocking problem, where you can actually see the impact of that in graph form and start to take decisions accordingly. You can add notes in on this section as well. So that's in this cycle up there. You click on the add notes, and you can put diary events on this. So when you make those ration changes, or when events occur, a typical example might be TB testing day, which disrupts routine, then you're marking it on there. So when you look back across your events, you can see what's affected your management. Hang on, lost me graphs. Oh, there we go. Herd performance. So looking again at this group, this is telling us with what level of consistency that group is performing. So essentially, the more cows that are finding their way onto the sick list out of that group, the lower that percentage will be. So again, you can add notes in here specific to the group or the whole herd, but it does tell you whether you're applying your rations and your routines in a consistent manner. Daily patterns. The shaded area is the 10-day average of whichever of the behaviors you select. So whether that's eating or rumination or inactivity. Shown in this slide is the eating time. So that's telling me what availability of feed is like. So the average is the shaded area over 10 days. The hard blue line running through the center is the 48 hours timeline. That's what's been happening. So when you've got consistent application of feed routine and cows are responding consistently to that, you'll have a narrow shaded area, and the hard blue line will be closer to the center of it. So this is an example of a fairly consistent application of feed and feed routine. A particular favorite of mine, cyclicity. We have a graph in here that is telling us everything that comes on heat from calving until the end of your voluntary wait period. Now, this is probably one of the clearest, in my view, indicators of the success of transition and early fresh cow management that's available within the system. So if we look at this particular graph, by the time it reaches the end of the voluntary wait period on this farm, which in this case is 70 days, you have 85 to 90% of all cows have had some cycling activity. That means they haven't had to go to the vet. That means they've cycled for themselves. That's a clear indicator that transition has gone well, and that fresh cow management is under control. When you look at that over time, which was the graph that I showed previously, you will see fluctuations. These are not necessarily graphs off the same farms. You will see fluctuations. The fluctuations are in part due to changes in the pressure on the system. So if you've calved a lot of cows and your fresh cow system is under pressure, it will have a negative impact. Also, commonly heat stress. You can track virtually every cycling rate graph across every NEDAP system that we have and locate a period of heat stress that has impacted on cyclicity. I think just to touch back on work lists, something that probably sets us apart a little bit with NEDAP over other systems is our ability to bespoke our work lists. So if you have any particular group that you want to pay specific attention to, you can generate it in a work list and add actions to it. So an example of that might be that you want to detect which cows in the run up to calving are performing below the level of the rest of your transition cows, predominantly because that will give you an indication of which cows are going to be a problem once they've calved. And the same conversely, once you have calved them, if you're managing a fresh cow system, to manage the space that you have available to you the most efficiently, you can generate a work list that will indicate when a cow has reached a certain level of rumination and a certain number of days in milk, and make that the parameters by which you move those cows. An example might be that you wanted to have achieved 400 minutes of rumination, which is kind of a standard line if she's on an incline, and that will be beyond, say, 5 days in milk. That would generate you a list that you can action, which you would then use that as the means to move cows into the main milking group. The advantages of that are that cows that go in a good status into that main milking group are less likely to go backwards when they have to encounter the hierarchical stress of making that change. So that's two examples of where you can use work lists on transition management, and reporting functions also offer similar abilities to, but more historic information into how we might look at how cows have performed during certain periods of time, certain groups of cows in certain locations. And it's all about governing your decision-making protocols and improving the decisions you make on a herd level to then drive that fertility and health, in the cows, and thus production. It's maximizing the return on investment really by using the herd app side of it, as well as just good submission rates from catching cows bulling, and good treatment rates from catching health problems earlier. So I think that covers the herd app side of it. I'd like to introduce you now, if I may, to Dane. Dane, we'd like you to talk, if you would please, about what was behind your decision to invest in collars, and what was your early experience of the setup of NEDAP.
Certainly, thank you very much, Ben. Just to give you a bit of a background of the farm that I manage. I manage a family, fourth generation family farm with the latter two generations currently. We have 740 dairy cows with 460 followers. However, 3 of those are actually reared by a neighbouring dairy farmer who gave up dairying about 6 years ago, and approached us on whether or not we wanted to rear heifers, which we jumped at the chance with it being bordering our boundary as it is. We've got a 50-point gear rotary, employ 14 staff. Overall, it's about 1,100 acres of grazing and arable, 300 of that locally, as you can see in that picture of grazing. We last month hit 11,200 litres average. We supply a premium supplier, which means we graze for more than 6 months of the year, which, as Ben says, adds its challenges, but with NEDAP now, we are able to overcome them. We milk twice a day, all year round, calving closed herd. We are a Cogent precision farm, so they do multiple services with us. So AIing, genomic testing. All animals on farm are now genomically tested at weaning. So we have full genomic data, and we installed NEDAP now back in October 2023 now. So yeah, why did we choose NEDAP now? We had a pedometer system which only does heat detection. It did heat detection, lying times, and we were coming to the end of the contract. I was out looking around, and there's quite a few different products on the market. And one of the things that really attracted me to NEDAP now was the fact that you have lifetime monitoring. A lot of other systems only have a finite amount of time that they continue and hold data because they're a locally based system. One thing about NEDAP now is all the data is actually in the cloud, which allows for a lot more processing power of that data, which then can be returned to the farmer with data that you can use and make decisions on farm, which I'll allude to later on. One of the other things is ease of management. NEDAP now integrates extremely well with Uniform and also our milking parlour, Gear, Westphalia. One thing that I don't think Chert mentioned, which is something that most people should be aware of, is any cow identification transponder, probably in 80% of cases, is made by NEDAP. One thing that we were alluded to and never knew is that we've always had cow ID and feeding on our parlour. When we were talking to NEDAP, they go, do you realise those actually are our transponders? So being able to then use one collar that not only will identify seg, but also then means that on Uniform, we only have to use one transponder ID for the parlour, and also use that then with NEDAP now with our rumination and our monitoring, etc. NEDAP now works and can be scaled to any geographical area. As you can see a picture there, we've got, if I can now find where the pointer is. No, I can't. Hopefully you might be able to see my mouse. We got the main, in the bottom left, we've got the main dairy herds there within those buildings where we have our 740 cows. But the top right-hand corner up there is where we have a lot of our dry cows and our own heifer rearing unit. And then right down, sort of in the middle at the very bottom, you'll see a few buildings there, and that's where our maternity unit is. So we had to get a system that would be able to have multiple readers that could then transmit that data back and then be able to process it over a large geographical site. One thing we work very closely with Cogent is setting up Wi-Fi bridges, enabled to just span those areas so that we weren't having to run cables, for example. A lot of other systems require dedicated cables from one place to another, where you don't need that with NeedUp now. The other thing which we needed a system to be able to do is our heifers are born on our farm. We then at weaning will then transport them over to our heifer rearing unit. And we wanted to be able to have the data from that heifer rearing unit on rumination, on heat detection, etc., so that we can also monitor that. We can also then monitor that heifer rearing unit. So when a cow is bulling, are they being served? Are they being served at the correct weight, or are we missing serves, missing opportunities? One thing about NeedUp now is with Uniform, we got Uniform, which has different databases, which our heifer rearing unit uses, and NeedUp now is able to integrate with those different databases within Uniform, so a cow can seamlessly move from our farm to our heifer rearing unit and then be moved back, all basically with a click of 3 buttons, and we can have all that data back on there. One of the things that we have, as I mentioned with the installation, is we are a grazing herd. We graze more than six months of the year, and cows are out wherever possible either side. We've still got around about 250 to 300 animals still outside grazing at the moment while the weather permits, and we've got collars on them, etc. So one thing that it allows us to do is be able to monitor them, because we can't put repeaters out in every field. We don't have power, and it's impractical because we'd be moving them. So being able to have a system which holds that data locally on the transponder, and then as they walk in via the tracks and they come into range, then that starts downloading. That's really important, because then it allows our staff to be able to seg cows to be then inseminated, or also then to seg cows so that they can be looked at. One of the things we talked about and was mentioned by Chirk is, you know, animals are prey animals. They don't visually show signs of sickness until almost it's too late. One of the things that we noticed when we did install the system is actually we were pulling animals off and putting them down the race, and a couple of staff would go, "Oh, I don't think there's much of an issue." But when that animal is stood still in a race, nice and calm, you can see her blowing. Maybe she had a bit of onset of pneumonia or something like that. And it was really interesting that we could then intervene by either drenching or giving an anti-inflammatory or a bit of pain relief. When you start looking at the data from when those cows have a little dip to then giving them either a drench or anti-inflammatory, they suddenly pick back up. I suppose it's a bit like humans. You know, we all have our off days. We all feel discomfort, but we go to work and we probably perform, 95% of our ability, 80% maybe. But we'll take a couple of paracetamol and we won't tell our colleagues that we're not feeling that great, but we get on with the job. And the cows are very much the same. They might lose the odd couple of litres, and they'll try and get through it themselves. But being able to take that paracetamol that we can, it makes us feel better and we perform better. Whereas a cow doesn't have that communication with us. And the only way to do that is by having a monitoring system, seeing that she's slightly under the weather, seeing that if we can intervene by giving us some more fluids, etc. And it's really interesting to see how it then picks those cows up. So yeah, we put it over multiple sites. It was installed within 2 days. To be honest, the biggest thing is we had to take all the old pedometers off. We had to take all the old collars off to put the new ones on. And that probably took the longest. But actually, once we got the transponder numbers, we imported them via an Excel spreadsheet into Uniform, synced the database into the clouds on NeedApp, and we were running by the next day. One thing I will say is NeedApp now, over the last 2 years, we had a short outage for an hour, but apart from that, we haven't had anything. One thing that hasn't been mentioned that I want to raise on that is the system will work as a standalone system as well. So we did have someone, and the reason why it's an outage is not necessarily NeedApp's fault. We had a internet outage whereby a cable got brought down, and that took the internet down. But we were able to log on locally onto the main server, and that gave us all the information that we still needed in order to run our basic data of heat detection and health monitoring.
So yeah,
some of the more
quite rightly, as you say, Dane. Yes, you don't necessarily need the internet to have the system operating. The system functions anyway. So you have your own network as you do, and the only thing that's going to stop that is power. It is a power outage that you can't correct. Otherwise, you've got a local area network. You can log on to your information. You've still got a system.
Yeah, indeed. And, and we saw that and it worked seamlessly. I can honestly say that. So, yeah.
That's great. So that's covered it, to a great extent, what your daily approach to using it for catching those early health signs, picking out your heat cows. Various members of your team, I know, do that. Various members of our teams as well are involved in that. What do you think then, Dana, the key improvements that you've noticed?
Certainly. Well, I've got some, I was asked to look at this as part of this, and when we installed it, before, we had a heat detection system. We were already monitoring heats. We saw value in that, in getting that data back rather than walk and chalk. You're not always there. You can't have eyes on cattle all the time. So you need to have a monitoring system. And one of the things we went with before was only heat detection and not rumination. But our submission was at 70, conception was at 44, and our preg rate was at 30%. After installing NeedApp now, with using the rumination and being able to treat animals quicker, which means that we don't get that loss of milk because the animal has gone into, further on down the line of feeling ill, which we all know. We see a dip in milk, then we see a dip in fertility. So our submission in the quarters afterwards, we're 76% submission, we're at 46% conception, preg rate, and even today we are now increased even further, and these numbers are off the top of my head. I think submission at the moment is around about 80%. Our preg rate's around about 36, depending on whether you look at it system you look at, whether it be uniform or total vet, and our conceptions are extremely well as well. And that is, I do put that down to the collars. We were able to identify some trends having put in the collars, and one of the biggest things that we've seen from that is I was looking at the patterns, as Ben mentioned earlier, and you can see the group patterns. We've got such a wide range of animals, 740, we've got to feed them plus the young stock. And we used to feed our high cows first because they were the first ones that were milked, trying to keep a 12-hour interval. Then we had our mids and our lows, and we sort of fell into the trap. We thought, mids, they produce slightly more milk because they're in their mid lactation, and the lows less again because at their end. But when you start looking at the data and look at herd trends, one of the things I found was, the lows were going back to the shed at 7 o'clock, and they would have some food in front of them, but it wasn't fresh. So they would go back, they would pick a little bit and go, that's yesterday's grub, I'm going to lie down and rest. And they wouldn't then get their next portion of ration probably to around about 10:30, 11 o'clock. And it started to make me look, because I was looking at the rumination times on the trends and the patterns, and I'd see that the highs have a very little period of time where they weren't ruminating, where they had a dip in rumination as part of the group as the herd. sorry, where as the group, they had a very little period of time where there was a dip. But the lows would almost have like 3 or 4 hours where the whole group had actually reduced in rumination time. And it began me to think, well, actually, we've got a one ration across a whole herd. Why are we not implementing a system where we feed all cows a portion of the ration? So we then started to look at doing that with our feeder wagon, increasing it, and how we can do that with our staff. Because obviously cows are walking and moving, as you've seen by the geographical location, there are challenges with that. But it meant that we were able to get to a point where at 7 o'clock in the morning, every cow on the farm gets roughly 30%, 10 to 30% of their ration, which gives them a fresh ration as close to coming out of the parlour as possible. We then obviously have to do various other feed outs where we top that up. But actually that had another advantage in that effectively they're push-ups. So every time you take a feeder wagon down the feed passage, no matter how full a cow is, they think, oh, there might be another cherry on the cake, so to speak, and I want to be the first one there. So they get up and they come to the feed face, and they might be 95% full, but they're already there, and they think, oh, I'm going to eat another 5-10%. And from doing that, we actually saw increases sort of from an average around about 2.5 to 3 litres, but in some cases it was nearly 4 to 5 litres increase, especially on that low cow group, because they were getting a fresh TMR, fresh food, when they were coming back from the parlour, and rather than just going and lying down, they were actively going to the feed face and filling up their ruminants. So I think there is a lot more to NEADAP. One thing I will say is the NEADAP will present you all the data that they have. They've got extensive tools within the system, as Ben's mentioned, that you can use, and it's up to the farmer to get out as much as they want to by looking at that data and analysing it. And that's one thing that I really do like about NEADAP now is it's well presented, like with the herd, like with the cow scores and things like that. It's well presented, it's easy, it's clear, and you can make some really quick decisions based on that information that you get.
Right. I mean, that's an excellent example of the information you've gained from the herd app to generate decisions that drive production. So that is the whole point. And you also raise another good point, is that engagement is critical. It is a tool like anything else. You need to learn to use that tool, and we are here to support the use of that tool as well, Dane, as you know. But I think you've made some absolutely excellent points, and I think the evidence in your data shows your returns have definitely been there. The information you've gained from rumination, the increases in submission and conception rate, drive and preg rate, invaluable. Really, it's difficult to see how running herds of that scale on that kind of operation could be done without technology.
Yeah, no, and it is key. Definitely it is, and it allows us to look after animals as best as we can, and they then in return provide us with statistics and also production, which inevitably helps with cost and efficiencies.
Absolutely. I think are we at the point now where we sort of throw the floor open to Q&A? Have we got some questions coming in to answer?
Yeah, thank you very much, guys, for that. That's really good, an insight to what how it's working for a customer. That was really good. Thank you very much, Dane. So yeah, myself and Ben now will go on to Q&A. So both of us are going to look at your questions. Keep adding questions, and we'll go through them all. So I'm going to start with the first one. So Ben, just go to published, and I'll take the first one. So the first question was, what does a site survey include? Yeah, a very good point. I suppose that every farmyard is different. So we have some sales team that have a lot of experience in this. If not, it's myself, Ben, or Dave will come out. We check where your internet is. You do need internet, but you don't have to worry if it's not a hardwired internet in. We can always run these off a 4G router, and you just have to get a SIM card. Each site is different, obviously, and a big open shed space is good. It's not a problem if it's not. That's when we look at a second antenna. So hopefully, hopefully that answers that question. So next question over to Ben.
Yeah, how soon after inquiry can a system be fitted? I think we're probably in the range of anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks, depending on where you are, what you require. But yeah, I would have said 2 to 6 weeks. 6 weeks being the outside, we're easily in that bracket, I'd say.
Yeah.
Dennis, a question underneath that regarding cost.
Yeah, just make sure I'm not jumping ahead. Sorry. Yeah, I wanted to good question. Right. So there's two ways we do this. We have a purchase program where you pay 20% deposit. The remaining balance is over 36 months, 0% payment plan, provided you sign a Siemens agreement with Cogent. So buy Cogent Siemens, and we will give you 0% interest. We also now, in the last year, have a subscription where there's a slight setup fee, and then you pay £2.25 per cow per month for those colours. So if we look at the basics of, we always start with, say, £100 a cow for a setup if you're purchasing the system. But this is subject to site survey, how many colours, how many antennas, etc. We also do have a trade-in program with NeedApp. So provided you have a system that you could trade in, it doesn't matter if those colours are not working, we give a discount of £5 per colour. So that's something to note. They have to be able to do either heat or health. If they're just an ID colour, that wouldn't work. So that's just something to there. But again, this is subject to site survey. Myself and Ben and David do the quotes as well as the installation and the backups. That's where we'd work it out in from there.
Okay, thanks very much, Dennis. Breeding efficiency. I know we've covered it sort of vaguely in the course of the topics. Breeding efficiency, well, you're driving it in first place through increasing submission rates. So accuracy of finding those quieter heats, making sure you're not missing any. Of course, once you have a system, a NeedApp system, you've got a record of all those heats as well. So you've got comparison to previous heats behaviors, and you can look at each period of heat in detail to see how the cows behaved. So driving submission rates, timing a service window, which is you can change in the settings as well, so that you can change your timing of service to suit sex semen or conventional semen. So accuracy of timing of serve. Also, if cows do not show any cycling or irregular cycling behavior, that's going to turn up on a reproductive checklist. So it's making sure that you also get the right cows to the vet in a timely manner. So that's the 3 prongs really from the point of view of daily drive of breeding efficiency. And then it comes back to that point of assessing whether your cows are actually cycling the way that you'd like them to, and that comes down to management practices, and that's where you use the herd app to drive that decision making process.
Yeah, maybe short addition to that, Ben, is also we have the star system now with the heat scores. So we don't only tell the system doesn't only tell there's a cow in heat, but it also gives a score from 1 to 5. Yeah. And now research is being done that also we see the strong heats. So the 4 and 5 stars, they have a higher conception rate than the 3 stars. So even in the future, you can also start making decisions on choice of semen, for instance, because the system will tell you if it's a strong heat, the conception rate is also expected higher. So that was just a quick addition to that it also tells point. You something about that. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good point.
Thank you. Right. Next question. How does it connect with existing herd management software? Yeah. So if we look at the main ones that we deal with, Uniform, Dairycom, HerdLink, the advantage of this is that you're not doing double entry of data. And basically we'll call it as a sync. So you set up your NeedApp program, we put the collars on the cows, and then we want all historical data to come across. And from that moment on, you look at the NeedApp, you see your information in front of you, but you put your action on the dairy software program. and that syncs across. We also have other ways of getting around some programs, for instance, CIS. If you're linked with Uniform, we can get all the data across as well. We have improvements in this now. Ben has one farm with Delpro, and we can link with that. Also, the milk eels can come across, so he's got Delpro robots. So there's a lot more we can do with NeedApp now, because it's cloud-based, a thing called an API, and it's working with different programs, how we can make that easier. So that hopefully will cover that. Just adding to it with parlor software. So as just mentioned, Delpro, we can do more, not just having your management software programs, but again, we look into each program, what we can do. Okay, next one, Ben.
Yes, no, just a good point, Dennis. Just like to add to that, with some of the connections that we can make, we can also manage sorting. Delpro would be an example of that. But yeah, reliability of the collars and provided support. Well, provided support, I'll start at that end of the question. Me, Dennis, and David are on this 24/7. There's always one of us, there's always one of us available on the phone to support and back up and do whatever's necessary to support the system, whether that's through training new staff when they come on, or whether it's through supporting issues if you have problems operating the system. Reliability of the collars, well, they carry a 5-year 100% warranty, and the lifespan is 8 to 10 years. I had NeedApp collars on a system before I came on for Cogent for 12 years. A good deal of those collars are into double digits as far as their age is concerned. Reliability is not a problem with NeedApp collars.
Okay. So last question, and feel free, I don't see any more, but we still got time if anyone wants to put some in. So how does the range work, and what happens when cows are out grazing? Yeah, that's actually asked a lot. That's a very good question. So like I said earlier, the collar holds 24 hours worth of rolling data. So an hour goes off and an hour comes on. But obviously, if your cows are out of range, say dry cows going on the field, there will be gaps of data. But normally how we work it is with grazing, essentially milking twice a day, cows come in range. We have this on numerous grazing farms, also they run drafting gates. There's never a delay. Max, we say 10 minutes where that cow will come in range. Once it hits about 200 to 250 meters of antenna, it starts building up that data. We have antennas that can easily cope with 700 cows. And a processor can actually handle up to 10,000 cows. We don't have any herds that size in UK yet, but it's not been a problem. So yeah, once it comes back in range, it uploads that data straight away. Thank you. Now, I believe that's just there's another. Sorry, Ben, yeah, go on.
So no, I was just going to say this is, I think, why the multi-site's so relevant in this country, because I think the expansion of farms seems to be more along the lines of additional units being taken on to expand rather than sort of super dairies, just because of the availability, I suppose, of land and space and the investment required. But that's it's a good example. It's a good example where multi-site helps you out. Keeping it all on one platform. Did we have another question coming in? I think you have reached the end, unless there's any more for any more. No, I think Dennis, we are wrapped up on Q&A.
Sorry, Ben. No, apologies. There's just I couldn't see it. Apologies. There is a question just come in. Do you have a mobile app or iPhone? Yeah. So basically, yes, there is an app. There is an app on NeedApp now to allow you to push notifications. You iPhone, Android, as long as you have a smartphone, it'll work. And that's basically how it'll work. So we have the server base where you look at it every day, but people do like to have the app with push notifications. So there is that option. But on NeedApp now, we have a proper app that will do that.
I think what it is, one of its differences as well with competitor apps is that it has a far closer representation to what you can see on the web browser. It's more complete. With a lot of apps, apps can't always carry the information that a web browser access can, but that's not the case with the NeedApp Now Cow Control app. It's all there. It's all there on your phone, on your tablet, on your PC. If you can access the internet, you can get all your data.
That's good. I think unless anyone else has a question, I think we're good. Hang on, a question just has come up. Publish. Ben, if you could answer this, can you see it unpublished?
I'm not seeing it. No, it's not come through to me. It's not. It's not refreshed.
If you just click on published.
Yeah, no, I haven't.
Okay, sorry, I'll read it out. If you're entering a calving, can you enter more than one at a time, or do you have to enter them individually?
Enter through quick entry. If you're entering directly on NeedApp now, not using a software program connected to it, then you can use quick entry, and you can do multiple events for the same calendar date. So if you've got 5 cows calve or 5 inseminations, you can enter them on quick entry in one list format.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. We're on time. Thank you very much, all the tendency. We've had a real good turnout today. This is actually our first time running one of these, so thank you very much for giving us the time. Thank you to Jerk, to Dane. Anyone out there has any more further questions, contact the office, contact your sales people, and we can take it from there, and we're happy to help. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.